Well, we all know the end of Dalaran is near. Whether you played through the opening campaign or not already, you know Dalaran, its days are limited. But it's been a city for us for quite a while now. Expansion to expansion, the history of it all, running past the purple bubble that used to exist near Scholar Monastery on your way there. Dalaran's been a big part of the game for a long time. Let's do a little history lesson on Dalaran and its great floating city of magic.
The war within's here, Azeroth is in danger, and we need to take decisive action, so it's time to fire up Dalaran, the flying wizard city that of course has housed us for 2 expansions and is home to the planet's sharpest minds and most powerful characters. It's been wrecked, it's been rebuilt, it's had demons, it's had Scourge, and it almost single-handedly held off the Legion until the rest of us got our act together. It's where we go when a problem needs sorted, and yet again Khadgar has lit the Kirin Tor signal. The only problem is that Xal'atath has been...
I'm going to be honest, I'm going to miss Dalaran, man. There's some good memories from Wrath of the Lich King and Dalaran, and even Legion. Oh, man. It's going to be good times. Remember when Garrosh and Varian almost got in a fight in Dalaran? It's a good city, man. It's got some history.
For years, knows exactly how we use Dalaran, and chances are she has something up her sleeve. So in case anything happens, here's the history of Dalaran, and if you'd like to dive even deeper, you can support us over on our site, bellular.games, where we have just posted an episode of the Lore Walking podcast on Dalaran, as well as, of course, a dive into the Threads of Destiny cinematic and much more exclusive member content. As soon as I leave this recording, the boys are coming in to do 2 more podcast episodes. So the site really is the best way to support us, and in return, you get tons of content, so you can check it out with a free trial today at the link below. With that said, let's talk about Dalaran. Our story begins thousands of years ago at the earlier days of humanity. Back then, the High Elves of Silvermoon taught humans magic. And it turns out we took to magic real well. We were powerful. Immense firestorms, huge arcane explosions. All guts, not much skill, and not that much judgment either. And so it was only a matter of time before all the radical wizards of humanity found a colossal ley line and decided to build a city atop it. When they did, they had fun. Arcane architects stretched spires into the sky, deep dungeons burrowed into the ground, there were sanctums, observatories, alchemical labs, every wizardly whim was fulfilled, and that was a problem. All of that
Dalaran really is like the Hogwarts of World of Warcraft, right? It's like that magical hub. Just you feel it when you're in it, the architecture of it is so unique. It does feel like a magical city, I have to say. The only thing I ever wished for Dalaran before the current events are going to happen is that one day it had been brought back to the ground and actually fleshed out, fully. Because currently the piece of Dalaran that we have is only a piece of it. It was actually larger than the floating city that we have today, in the lore at least. So I would have liked to see that, but I guess we never will.
Magic made the fabric of reality fray. Demons began to slip in from the twisting nether. And so the leaders, known as the Kirin Tor, went into crisis mode, and they asked Silvermoon what the hell was going on. That's when the elves revealed that things were actually quite bad. A group called the Burning Legion were devouring planets, and they were on a crusade towards Azeroth. They, in fact, already tried to take us out during the War of the Ancients, and, a little bit like Queen Ashara with the Well of Eternity, Dalaran's magic risked being a beacon in the dark to lead the enemy to us. This horrified the Kirin Tor. For the first time, they wondered if they were actually dabbling in powers well beyond their control.
Of course,
being humans, the last thing we were going to do was stop. But what we did do was start an even more powerful, even more secret top echelon of the Kirin Tor called the Council of Tirisfal. That group would imbue a Guardian with power from the other Archmagi. Magic would be regulated, but within this Guardian, maximum power was imbued so that they could face off any threat. One Guardian, Aegwynn, even fended off the Avatar of Sargeras, imprisoning it in what we of course now call the Tomb of Sargeras. And so this Legion versus Guardian Shadow War lasted.
The whole theory of the Guardian, the lore of the Guardian, is actually pretty badass, and it goes back real far, as he was just mentioning, all the way to the imprisonment of Sargeras. But one thing I didn't realize is that he gets his powers from the other mages. I thought the Guardian was kind of just like, oh, he gets a spell and ascends or something, but evidently it's like a combination of other mage powers, and that's how he's like the amalgamation of all their powers in one person. Interesting.
For 2,000 years until the Legion decided to change their plan. They found a more useful proxy in the Orcs of Draenor. These orcs were quite the threat. They, of course, ended up sacking Stormwind. Now, Dalaran ignored them in the beginning, as insane as that sounds, but of course Dalaran was a bit different back then. Dalaran was slower, it was more conservative, but it was, of course, about to be woken up.
Oh shit, the city's going
The dark
woke.
portal had opened. Warlocks rivaling the most powerful mages of Dalaran burned through the Wizards of Stormwind, and the Horde began to march north. This led to the immediate defense of Dalaran, a defense that required its every resident. Ogre Magi, Death Knights, Warlocks, and hordes of orcs fell upon the city, but themselves fell short of victory. Even so, Dalaran was left in a shocking state. It was wrecked. But this wasn't really the setback you would imagine. That's because a crystal known as the Eye of Dalaran would be used to rapidly repair the city. And so Dalaran...
Oh shit, so maybe they can use the Eye of Dalaran now. Maybe we are going to get Dalaran back. I didn't even know about this. The Eye of Dalaran used to repair the city. Maybe we can fix it after all.
And so Dalaran basically was okay. But that absolutely did not last for long. So this Horde thrust into the north essentially ended up failing. They had to retreat. And while they failed to take Azeroth, their leader, Ner'zhul, hatched a plan. He wanted to capture powerful artifacts from across Azeroth and use them to open countless portals from his world of Draenor to many other worlds, basically ones that would be easy to conquer. One of his minions and first Death Knight, Terran Gorefiend, made his way to Dalaran and he stole the Eye. Many other artifacts were taken, and over in Draenor, Ner'zhul would eventually perform his ritual. This, of course, backfired tremendously, but what matters is that a little before that, Deathwing was driven from his lair on Draenor. What he did is he escaped back through the dark portal to Azeroth, where he soon fought the Kirin Tor. He faked his death, and he slipped into his visage form, posing as Daval Prestor, a human noble. He then essentially embedded himself within Lordaeron, and he worked to turn the various human kingdoms against each other.
I had no idea. This is a real... Deathwing freaking became a politician at some point? And turned the human kingdom against... I had no idea this was a freaking thing. What the hell?
Especially...
Also, visage. What a way to say it.
Yes, Dalaran. This meant that politics became nasty, and through some sleuthing, the Kirin Tor worked out that this Daval Prestor fellow wasn't really who he seemed. Ultimately, Deathwing's schemes here would fail. This led to Alexstras's freedom, a whole big battle, and Deathwing's retreat to Deepholm. And of course, with that, the mysterious disappearance of Daval Prestor. Now, you may think that Dalaran was therefore safe, but it wasn't. Stormwind was a ruin. Tensions had been growing within the Alliance of Lordaeron, and Dalaran found itself politically isolated. And that meant that humanity was set to face its next threat, rather divided. Here's the lay of the land as we're about to enter Warcraft 3. So, the Alliance of Lordaeron was essentially a little bit more politically divided. The Kirin Tor were also a bit politically isolated, and loads of orcs were being kept in internment camps.
So the Kirin Tor essentially became the Jedi? I mean, is that what it is? They were the Jedi, trying to, they had their own political whims and things that they wanted to achieve, and they kind of isolated themselves in a way, but then still remained loyal to the current empire. Interesting.
Let's focus in on Dalaran. So, at the time, the Kirin Tor was ruled by the Council of Six. This six would be the most powerful, or perhaps political wizards. They had immense power, and they did not have a lot of oversight from other council members. Now, one of them,
it's like the Jedi Council,
found himself delving too deep into the darkest texts of Dalaran's most secret archives.
I've heard this guy's name before. He's probably the most killed boss in the game. I feel like eventually they're just going to run out of bosses in the War Within. We're going to bring back Kel'Thuzad again. Why not? Kill him again.
He felt something in his mind. He felt a presence that called him north. You see, Ner'zhul's gambit had failed on Draenor, the planet was wrecked, and he tried to escape. He, of course, was captured by the Legion. They decided to put Ner'zhul to use as the first Lich King and essentially use him to harness the powers of undeath to weaken the planet, paving the way for a full Legion invasion. And so, from Icecrown, Ner'zhul's mind called out to potential allies, like Kel'Thuzad, who left Dalaran as a member of the Council of Six and returned as the head of the Cult of the Damned. Working through the cult and using plagued grain, they infected vast numbers of the human population. A population that a young prince of Lordaeron, Arthas, would try to save, and in trying, completely open himself up to manipulation.
Well, he did nothing wrong. Man was just trying to save his people, isolate the sickness away, and his friends didn't have the gall or the balls to do it. So the prince had to do it himself. In isolation, he became corrupted. Unbelievable.
Arthas would soon kill Kel'Thuzad, Stratholme's population would be culled, and Arthas eventually hunted the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis all the way up to Northrend, where he would take up Frostmourne and then return home. But he did not return home as only Prince, no, he returned as the Lich King's most powerful Death Knight. As we know, the Lich King Scourge had one mission: to make the world ready for the Legion's second invasion. Not that, of course, the Lich King actually trusted the Legion. And what I'm going to do here is just cut through a whole bunch of intrigue so we can stay focused on...
The Lich King was actually anti-Legion. At least I was when Arthas came into power. And Arthas did acknowledge the Legion as a thing. And his goal was, well, I'll just turn the entire world into undeath and then have the whole of Azeroth as an army to fight against the Legion. He did. That is acknowledged in, I think it's the Arthas storybooks is where he says that.
Dalaran. What happened is Arthas annihilated the Blood Elves, he cut his way to the Sunwell, and he used it to resurrect Kel'Thuzad. Our duo was then set the task of summoning Archimonde, a big lieutenant of Sargeras, to Azeroth. This was not an easy feat, but it was not impossible. Kel'Thuzad was still an immensely powerful mage, and he knew Dalaran like the back of his hand. He knew that within the city lay the Book of Medivh, and using incantations from the Book of Medivh, of course, Medivh was the last guardian, well, he could summon Archimonde. So the path was clear. Besiege Dalaran, claim the book, and summon Archimonde. Needless to say, this plan was successful.
Man, these old WoW cinematics, well, this isn't WoW, this is just Warcraft, but these old cinematics from Blizzard, they're just, man, they hit it. It's so much darker. Something about it. Oh, these are good. It's a great cinematic. Oh shit, there it goes. The war within begins.
Dalaran lay in ruins, the surviving mages fled, and while Alliance forces would later set up in its ruins, Warcraft 3's expansion saw them defeated, and the northern segment of the Eastern Kingdoms essentially in total ruin. At some point after that, but before World of Warcraft, the surviving Kirin Tor would return to the site of the city. They set about rebuilding, and to give themselves time and safety, they erected a vast magical barrier. And it's in this barrier that we first discovered Dalaran.
This is the first version of Dalaran I ever saw, and I used to see it as an Alliance toon, footing it all the way to Scarlet Monastery. Running literally by foot because, for one, I wasn't level 40 yet, and then even when I hit level 40, I didn't have enough gold to buy my first mount. So I continued to foot it to Scarlet Monastery. But man, the memories of running by this bubble and wondering, what the hell is this thing? I had no idea of the lore back then. I was like freaking 2005. I don't know what's going on in the game, but I just know there's a giant purple bubble that I run by every day.
Saw a magical bubble beside Lordimir Lake with Kirin Tor outposts scattered in Silver Pine and Hillspread. We had no idea what was going inside. Many assumed the barrier one day would drop and perhaps we'd be able to visit this mythical wizard city that had been destroyed in the previous 2 games. Of course, nobody was prepared for the reality. Through World of Warcraft and the Burning Crusade, Dalaran just existed within its bubble. But one day we logged in when Wrath of the Lich King launched. The barrier was gone. In its place was a giant crater. And that's because Dalaran had quietly lifted from the ground and flown to Northrend. Ronan, their leader, demanded unity and neutrality. The world had bigger problems, in this case the new Lich King, Arthas. And so this now neutral Dalaran officially left the Alliance, but did allow for Horde and Alliance-aligned factions like the Sun Reavers and Silver Covenant to coexist within the city. And from Dalaran, we fought the Scourge, we fought Ice Trolls and Rubians, Vrykul, and even Blue Dragons who had followed their mad aspect leader Malygos into essentially a war over the control of magic. Malygos was probably right that we can't really be trusted, but he went way too far. Wrath of the Lich King, of course, was a special time for...
Yeah, see, Dalaran is a good example of everything a flying city should be, right? It was a good size for a flying city. Everything was pretty much laid out flat, nice round circular run around, but then everything still looks a bit different so you know where you are in the city. On the other hand, Oribos is exactly what a flying city should not be. First of all, it looked like a sky dildo. Second of all, there were multiple levels to it. Third, you never knew where the hell you were because, yes, it was built in a circular construction, but the entire thing looked the same. So I never knew if I was on the right side or the left. I used to run around that place in circles every day until the end of the expansion. I still had no idea where I was. Damn it. I hated that place. Dalaran loved it, though.
World of Warcraft. The game was at its zenith, its absolute peak in terms of subscribers. The expansion was loved, and through all of that wonderful time, Dalaran was our home city. But of course, it wasn't long before Arthas was done and the cataclysm began. Faction tensions flared up a little bit, and Dalaran took a back seat while we dealt with our tensions and, of course, dealt with Deathwing. But that is, of course, until two major events happened: the Mana Bomb and the Purge.
Ooh.
Garrosh, the new war chief of the Horde, considered Dalaran to really be another Alliance asset. So, he leaned on Horde loyalist blood elves like Phelan Songweaver to gather the knowledge and the artifacts needed to build the mother of all mana bombs. Then he baited the best of the Alliance to Theramore and unleashed the bomb upon them. This completely destroyed Theramore, and the full force of the blast was only averted by Ronan, the leader of the Council of Six, standing in its path and essentially giving up his life to save some lives. That was an absolute disaster, and it's one that brings us to the other great power.
Essentially the first nuke ever used in WoW. It's like the atomic bomb version in IRL.
In the city, Jaina Proudmoore.
Now,
before the Third War, she was a student in Dalaran, and she discovered from Medivh that Kalimdor existed. So she sailed west, she built the city of Theramore, and eventually rejoined the Kirin Tor and became the main Alliance advocate for neutrality. Of course, she had formed a great friendship with Thrall. She felt that he was honorable, that his horde was honorable, but now, years later, well, Thrall was no longer war chief, and Garrosh's bomb completely changed that. He destroyed the city that she established. He killed scores of people that had been close to her. And with Ronan gone, Jaina was installed as the new leader of the Kirin Tor, and she quickly accused Aethys Sunreaver of treachery. He was the leader of the Sunreavers, who of course were the Blood Elf contingent in the city. Thing is though, his hands were clean. Garrosh was actually working through Thalin, not Aethys, and Aethys, yes, was a Blood Elf, but he respected Dalaran's neutrality, and he even wanted his people out of Garrosh's increasingly just, intolerant and warlike horde. Now,
I don't know if you guys believe this. The Blood Elves during this time period actually came very close to rejoining the Alliance. It almost happened. It almost did. Man, imagine.
Situation,
you wake up and your character transferred all the way to the Alliance. You couldn't control
may have been okay if this was their only problem, but it wasn't. Garrosh wanted this ancient Mogu artifact from Pandaria called the Divine Bell. Now, I'm going to save you a long story here, but TLDR, he was up to no good.
This is when he bitch slapped Anduin into the bell. Oh my god, I forgot about this. Fucking knocked him out.
Unfortunately for Garrosh, though, the Alliance forces got to the bell first, and they stashed it away in the Night Elf home of Darnassus. And that's where Dalaran came in. Somehow the city's portal network was used to smuggle the bell out of Darnassus. And this was bad. Really bad. Dalaran, a neutral city, was used to steal from the sovereign territory of another nation. This essentially stood against everything the city stood for, and for Jaina, this was the last straw. She went absolutely ballistic. Now, if you ask the Alliance, the Sunreavers were offered imprisonment, and yes, maybe those who resisted violently were harmed in self-defense. If you ask the Horde, basically, she just led a violent purge and killed scores of Blood Elves in the streets.
Oh shit, I didn't know
this. With that act, Dalaran's 2,000-year Alliance of Silvermoon was in tatters, its neutrality was gone, and Jaina led the now Alliance-aligned Kirin Tor over a handful of years, while we, after the events of Mists of Pandaria, went and handled the Iron Horde threat over an AU Draenor. Now that expansion, of course, ended with AU Gul'dan cast as the Legion's Harbinger, and with that, Doomsayer started flooding into the streets. The mad and unhinged began to scream prophecies of world-ending threats, and that meant that once again Dalaran would be at the center of a giant Legion conspiracy barreling towards Azeroth. There is one
in the
steadfast
making.
man who represents...
Oh, there he is. There he is. I still am completely unspoiled on his story for The War Within. I'm very afraid that he's gonna die. I'm not gonna lie. I am scared that he's gonna die. This is Khadgar, man. Chadgar, after he just blasted Xal'atath with a beam the last time I saw him doing anything. Man, the man could have even became... He could have became the Guardian. You guys remember those cinematics during WoD where he was like offered the power of the Guardian and he thought about just literally obliterating the entire Iron Horde, but he refused? God, what a Giga Chad.
the core of what Dalaran should be, and that is Khadgar. Now, he had only recently returned after shutting down the Dark Portal from the wrong side during Warlords of Draenor, and he found his city massively changed. It was...
He is the Guardian by title, but not by power. He does not have the powers of a typical Guardian.
Lying, it was bogged down in politics, and that simply wouldn't do.
Corrupting.
The Legion were coming, and so he had a solution: to fly Dalaran and tell everybody that Gul'dan had ignited the next Legion invasion. And so there was a question: what would Dalaran be? Would it be an alliance asset, or would it be the neutral platform from which the best of all sides would fight the Legion? Well, this was put to a vote, and the Council of Six voted 4-2 in favor of neutrality. And that meant that a furious Jaina stormed off, meaning that Khadgar take her place
emo
as
face.
leader. And so Dalaran was, 8 years after Wrath of the Lich King, once more our hub city. It wasn't the same. A new sanctum existed in its center. It housed vast libraries and portals. It was a glorious time. Of course, from Dalaran we beat the Legion back, and after defeating Sargeras, it's to Dalaran we returned, but with much of the world changing. You see, tensions were once again growing between the factions.
Have the Nerubians always... they've always been in existence. They're an old god mutation. Like, they've been around forever. They've been around since the old gods were fighting against the elementals. Yes, the Nerubians, long ago.
Because both sides were seizing
race.
Azerite, a very, very dangerous material from the planet's new wound. War seemed to be on the horizon, and that is something that Khadgar and the Council had no part in. And so, while we did our thing through Battle of Azeroth and Shadowlands, the city remained over the Broken Shore for years. Dalaran was first a player hub in Wrath of the Lich King. 8 years later, it was a player hub during Legion, and now, 8 years later again, it's going to be the player hub as we fight Xal'atath. I mean, unless something absolutely crazy happens, but that's completely unrealistic. I'm sure Dalaran is fine, and it will be our new home city for this expansion. So, I hope you enjoy that, hope you look forward to that, and with that said, if you want to see way more lore content, if you want hours of in-depth lore podcasts to listen to while you adventure around Khadgar, go and check out the Lore Walking Podcast over on our members site, Bellular.games, where we, of course, have much more as well. Alright, that's it for me. Have fun with the new expansion, and I'll see you next time.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Very nice video. I am wondering, though, that Eye of Dalaran that they used to repair it, is that going to be able to be used? Because they did use it once to repair Dalaran. Maybe they could do it again. Who knows? I don't know what happens yet in the War Within. I literally am minutes away from playing through the campaign, but I mean, if they could use it once to repair Dalaran, maybe they could do it again. Or Dalaran's going to get completely obliterated, and the eye is going to get obliterated too. Who knows? But good video from Bellular.